My name is Rumi Khan. I'm a rising senior at Newark Charter High School, and today I will be talking about my role model. So this person is a seminal personality who was not only critical for the foundation of Islam, but also to me personally. Her name is Khadija Al-Kubra. She was the wife of the Prophet. But first, let me tell you a little bit about her, just historical facts. She was born in the mid-550s, and she was known originally for her extraordinary entrepreneurial prowess. She amassed a massive amount of wealth in the city of Mecca and lots of political power, which is very strange for women at the time. She used her wealth to serve the poorer parts of Mecca and also to take care of her family members and the impoverished community. So she amassed her wealth by running a caravan business. She was in charge of over half of all the trade that went in and out of Mecca, sending goods to the Byzantine Empire across the ocean. So that gave her a lot of power in the region, and it also was unique because, again, a person of her gender would not really usually have so much power or status. She was so famous that she went by the name Khadija Al-Kubra. Al-Kubra means the Great, so she was known as the Great. So the story goes that she, of course, cannot run her caravan herself, so she had to hire a representative to run the caravan. So she looked around the community to find someone who was known to be honest or trustworthy, and she found a man who we now know as Prophet Muhammad. She hired him out for a few years to run the caravan, and when she got to know him personally, she realized that this was a very extraordinary individual. At the time, she was 45 and he was 25, and she offered to marry him. He responded by saying, I'm sorry, I'm not wealthy enough, I can't support a wife, I'm going to have to say no. And she responded by saying, what if I told you that your wife could support herself? They agreed. So the time came for revelation, where Muhammad became a prophet. This was a tumultuous time in his life. He would meditate at the cave in, I believe, Hira, where he would ponder upon what was real, what wasn't real, what the meaning of life was. I'm sure many people do that. However, when the revelation came to him, he was thrown into a state of panic and confusion. He thought maybe I'm going crazy, like he didn't understand what was happening. He was nervous and lost and scared. And he didn't understand what was happening. So he reached out to the only person he knew he could trust, which was his wife. She mentored him, she believed him, and she helped him work through understanding what was happening to him. She also did some investigation of her own to try and understand what these revelations meant. She contacted one of her cousins, whose name was Waraka ibn Nawfal, who was an historian priest. And he basically explained what was happening. In his mind, this is just evidence that Muhammad would become the prophet of God. During those 2 years, Khadija handled a very unusual solution. She saw the prophet, her husband, when he was most vulnerable and most human, and trying to understand what his purpose was in life. Not only did she understand what was happening, but she converted to Islam. She was the first Muslim. She helped the Prophet spread his message, and they remained married for 25 years. The relationship was very, very unusual for Arabia at the time. Even more unusual as the Prophet gained more influence in the region. For example, Khadija and the Prophet had a very loving and caring and very personal relationship. It was one based off of mutual advice-giving, honest discussion, and emotional support. Khadija even maintained her wealth and her trading empire while she was the Prophet's wife, and used it to help spread the message across their area. She suffered when the Prophet suffered through starvation and embargo when the Muslims were evicted from Mecca. The Prophet once said of her, "When all others opposed me, she supported me." It's important to say that Khadija was the first Muslim woman, and she was also the first Muslim. And today we live in an era where Muslim women are portrayed as subservient, submissive, not exactly very independent. And I find it satisfying that the very first Muslim was the complete antithesis to this trope. She was anything if not. Well, she was independent, of course. She ran her own business. So obviously she wasn't subservient. So she grew up in the rather patriarchal society of Arabia, which meant there was a lot of barriers to her kind of success early on in her life. Yet she negotiated her own life on her own terms, managed her family, and made her own life. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I think she's one of my role models. I admire her drive that she had so, like, the deck was dealt against her, basically. And even despite that, she could make something of it. And it was impressive. But there's something else fundamental about her that I admire, which is her perseverance. She saw the Prophet as not just a messenger of God and the leader of the Ummah, the community, but also as a vulnerable human. Through observation, she understood Prophet Muhammad in a way no other person ever could and ever will. That is something I try to do, and it's something I know is utterly impossible for me to even come close to matching. But there was something else that she had that I try to emulate, which is the role of the comforter or the supporter. For example, I'm sure if you've been in school, you remember your school days, there was always students who were outcasts, people who had no friends, they weren't in any cliques, any social groups. They were tormented by loneliness, and everyone really can shine. Everyone is a gem. Maybe they're not cut very well, but they can be. So, over the last few years, I've found myself in the unusual situation where I see those kind of people, and I've reached out to them over the last few years, and I can say that by playing the role of the comforter, by finding people who are lost and confused and bringing them close to me and trying to draw connections to them, it has built a network of friends that I'm so grateful for. And some of my best friends are people I've met through this role as a comforter. So Sufi Muslims, they don't see gender as two discrete things. They rather see them as like a scale a person can have. There's masculinity, there's femininity. So I can say that Khadija helps me find my feminine side and helps me express it in ways where I can make other people's lives better. So for me, Khadija isn't just a model for Muslim women, she's the model for all Muslims. Thank you.
And